So tonight on Twitter, well, it'll technically be last night by the time you guys are watching this, but bear with me. On Twitter, hashtag drop out Bernie was trending. There were so many tweets of people calling for hashtag drop out Bernie. So I felt like it was appropriate to show you guys a clip of Hillary Clinton talking. This is in her 2008 presidential run, and this is when she was in a pretty almost identical spot to where Bernie Sanders is right now. So let's take a look at the video, and then we'll come back and we'll see what we can make of it.
Between my opponent and his camp and some in the media, there has been this urgency to end this. And, historically that makes no sense. So I find it a bit of a mystery.
You don't buy the party unity argument?
I don't, because, again, I've been around long enough. My husband did not wrap up the nomination in 1992 until he won the California primary somewhere in the middle of June. Right? We all remember Bobby Kennedy was assassinated in June in California.
What the? That's weird. It seems like back in 2008, Hillary Clinton didn't really have a problem with someone sticking around in the primary and potentially sowing disunity in the party by, staying around when it wasn't looking like they were going to have a chance at winning. When it was her, she didn't really have a problem with it. But with Bernie Sanders, she said that it was, him staying in till the convention that cost her the election. He didn't do enough for her to win. That's what she was saying. But you guys don't think Hillary Clinton's a hypocrite, do you? But I digress. Hillary Clinton, to my knowledge, didn't say anything about last night specifically. But it's always appropriate to call Hillary Clinton's a hypocrisy. But it's just crazy. The idea that you would call for Bernie Sanders to drop out when over 1/3 of the delegates are still up for grabs. And I get it. It is very unlikely that Bernie Sanders gets a nomination at this point. I understand, especially with proportional, the way that delegates are given out on a proportional basis, it would be very difficult for Bernie Sanders to make up the margins that he's behind. But it is not impossible. It is just not mathematically impossible for him to overcome his how many he's behind. And so it is perfectly within reason for him to stay in the primary. I think it's within reason if it was completely mathematically impossible for him to stay in the primary. Because he has an agenda. He has an agenda that he wants to get through, and Joe Biden just flat out does not support that agenda. He does not go as far as Joe Biden does not go as far as he needs to go when it comes to climate change. He does not go as far as he needs to go when it comes to healthcare. He's just flat out bad when it comes to foreign policy. There are a bunch of issues that Joe Biden is terrible on. So you cannot criticize Bernie Sanders for not just dropping out and supporting Joe Biden. Now, unfortunately, it looks like Bernie Sanders, if he does drop out, he will endorse Joe Biden. That's really unfortunate. I would honestly want for Bernie Sanders to run as a third party if he doesn't get the nomination. I really believe it is more important that Bernie Sanders actually attempts to get his agenda through than we coalesce behind the Democrat for no ideological reasons. And so that's one issue. But there's just some of the calls for Bernie Sanders to drop out are just so bad. There are people saying that by him staying in the primary, he's putting people in danger by making people having to go out and vote because of the coronavirus. And it's just people are just lobbing out these attacks. They really are. Especially when to my understanding, it was mostly progressives that were calling for them to move the primaries into later dates so that people wouldn't have to go out and vote while the coronavirus is things are so heated right now. So that was Bernie Sanders people that were calling for that. It was not Joe Biden's camp. So the idea that he's putting people in danger it's just ridiculous. And there's people that say by him staying in the primary, he's he's hurting Joe Biden. And it's no. When Bernie Sanders literally just says what Joe Biden voted on, because that's what he's done. Bernie Sanders' attacks against Joe Biden are so mild. They are so mild. And people are oh my gosh, he's helping Trump. He's just saying oh, you voted for this. Just literally just reading off his record. Oh, you voted for the Iraq war. You voted for the crime bill. You actually wrote the crime bill. You voted for the Hyde Amendment. You did this. You did. He literally would just read off his record. And people will be oh my gosh, you're helping Trump, this and that. And it's no, that's not Bernie Sanders hurting Joe Biden and helping Trump. That's just Joe Biden being terrible and his record just being objectively bad. like, reading off his record is not an attack. That is not an attack. Bernie Sanders has not gone after what looks like, I flubbed my words on that, that's ironic, but has not gone after Joe Biden, what seems to be a clear decline in his cognitive abilities. I don't know if he has dementia. I don't know. I'm not going to say he has dementia. I'm not a doctor. I'm not anything. But there does seem to be a little something there. I'll just say it. There does seem to be a little something there to that. But Bernie Sanders isn't calling him out on that. He's not calling him out on that. And so it's like, what? They're just against primaries. If it is someone to the left, they're just flat out against primaries. That's just what it is. Bernie Sanders just can't run. He shouldn't have been in it this long. He should drop out now. It is so ridiculous. But luckily, it does not look like at the moment Bernie Sanders is going to drop out. I really hope, like I said, I hope he stays in literally as long as possible. Pull Joe Biden to the left as far as you can. And if you don't get the nomination, run as a third party. It is so important that we get these policies passed. And I think that if Joe Biden is the nominee, endorsing him is not the way to do that. It is to run as a third party if you're Bernie Sanders. But anyway, if you disagree with anything I say in this video, make sure to leave a comment below. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and have a great day.